It's been a very interesting year for space games. Some very big titles released this year, some exceptionally good titles, a few disappointments, but all round a very interesting year for the genre. Now, as we close in on the end of the year, there's some holidays coming up, and it's highly likely a bunch of you are going to want to chill to some new games. So with that in mind, here's a look at some space games that you can get both cheap as well as free over on Steam. So we'll start with the free games. Moonrunner is a little bit like Death Stranding. This is an excellent game where you run around various moons trying to locate various objects and achieve different objectives. This one I really did enjoy a lot. It's not exceptionally long. I think there's probably maybe a couple of hours of gameplay in this, but it's just, it's entirely free, so nothing to lose when trying this out. Very well put together, and I highly recommend it. This one, like I say, is called Moonrunner. Another free game, or this one is a free demo, is Flight of Nova. Now, the full version of this will cost a little bit of money. It's not on sale, unfortunately, on Steam, but you can download the demo. This has Newtonian flight mechanics, and that makes flight very, very interesting. It also means both full re-entry into the planet's atmosphere as well as exit from the planet, makes for some compelling gameplay. Combined with the various missions that the game includes, this one is a very neat space game, highly worth looking at and very much recommended. The third free space game I recommend you take a look at is Space Mechanic Simulator Prologue. On this one, you'll be out in space floating around with the objective to repair various different satellites and other machines up in space. Now, this one is very different from the other two, and again, this is kind of a demo in a lot of ways. This is the Space Mechanic Simulator Prologue. If you want the full game, you can also buy that, and I do believe it's on sale right now. What does it say? Down to £8.79 if you do enjoy it. Now, let's move on to a bunch of the other games that I want to recommend. Now, keep in mind that this is the Steam style I'm showing, but you can also get many of these games on GOG.com as well as Green Man Gaming and many of the other sites out there. I do recommend that you check out the other sites before you commit to buying here, because they've all got some very good offers on right now. Let's start then with the space game I really do want to recommend. This is X4 Foundations. Right here we can see the expansion X4 Kingdom's End, and it does add significantly to the overall base game. The expansion currently is priced at just £8, so that's pretty good. Or if you want to look at this, the entire bundle, it looks like, you can get that for £32 instead of £90. So X4 is a single-player space game, and probably one of the best single-player space games actually out there. It allows you to do space trading, space mining, and pretty much everything that you'd expect from a traditional space game. You start off with a lone single-player ship, just a ship on your own, and you can expand all the way out to have both a fleet of ships as well as an entire industrial empire. So if you want to settle in for some really long play sessions and build up a massive interstellar empire, then X4 is definitely worth a look. Now, when you're talking of space games of scope, you can't fail to mention Elite Dangerous. This is arguably one of the best space games ever made. If you've never played it, and that's probably very unlikely at this point, if you've got even a reasonable interest in space games, you've probably tried it out. But if you've never actually played it, then there is literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours worth of gameplay in this title alone. The game is priced at just £3.99 right now. That's a massive 80% off. So if you haven't tried this before, now is the time to jump in. And if you want an additional copy for some reason, you could do far worse than actually picking it up from Steam right now. One thing I can't necessarily recommend, however, is the expansion Elite Dangerous Odyssey. I'm not a big fan of this, and a lot of people aren't either. As you can see, it's still got a mostly negative rating for all reviews, although to be perfectly fair, recent reviews are now sitting at 65% mixed. This game allows you to get out of the ship, it has space legs, it allows you to walk around on the surface of planets, not to mention giving you the interiors of your fleet carriers. So whilst I personally wouldn't necessarily recommend Odyssey right now, I did want to include it here because, it's priced at £8.99. So included with Elite Dangerous, this is still a pretty good package overall. Throughout 2023, Frontier have added some extra content to Elite Dangerous, and they've said they're going to continue to support it over 2024 and beyond. What that means just yet, we don't know. It just may simply mean they're keeping the servers on, or it may mean additional content is also on the way. But either way, one thing you can be sure of is that if you pick up Elite Dangerous, you've got plenty of hours worth of gameplay here. Now, Evochron Legacy is another single-player space game. This one, very much like X4, allows you to trade, fight, explore, and pretty much everything else you would expect from a space game. This one is a little bit older than X4 though, released back in 2016. This is developed by a very small development team. Overall, it can be a bit of a complex game to get into, but if you're persistent and you persevere, you're going to have plenty to take away with this. Right now, this is on sale, priced at £16.79, so a little bit more expensive than the other titles we've discussed so far, at least for the most part. But yeah, this one is definitely worth a look if you're into those compelling single-player space games that follow the traditional space game genre mould. Another single-player title, and this one is my best space game of 2023, is EVERSPACE 2. This is a space combat shooter that has a whole bunch of different star systems that you can explore, as well as a variety of different gameplay areas. To all intents and purposes, this is a looter shooter combined with a variety of RPG elements. You can go out and gather resources, craft, get involved in some really high-intensity combat, fly around the surface of planets, explore the interior of massive shipwrecks, not to mention dive down into caves on those planetary surfaces. So some really nice graphic effects here as well. This one is currently priced at £26.99, and yes, this is still my favourite space game of 2023. Now, if you prefer things to be a bit more multiplayer focused, then Space Engineers is probably worth a look. This one allows you to create pretty much everything. This is an open world sandbox builder. Space Engineers has been around for quite a while. In fact, you can see the 10th anniversary update was released relatively recently. The development team behind this game, Keen Software, are very good because they do constantly and consistently update the game with very, very good quality patches. So if you fancy building some space stations, some planetary bases, spaceships, and you fancy doing so with some friends or on your own, not to mention creating various different vehicles, you can certainly do so with Space Engineers, and it's perhaps one of the best examples of such a game actually out there. This one currently is priced at £7.74, so yeah, this is very well priced. Moving on to the more intense experience, we've got the Dead Space remake. Now this is a fairly new game. In fact, it released in January 2023, coming on for a year old at this point, and this of course is a remake of the much older game which released back in 2008. Now the perhaps surprising thing here is that this is an EA game, an Electronic Arts game, but it's actually very, very good. This one is one of my more interesting experiences of the year, both in terms of the visual aesthetics, but also most notably for the gameplay as well. It retains everything that the original had, but also adds a few new interesting twists where it just generally improves a few different areas of the game, bringing it bang up to date to the 2023 era. This one is priced at £20. So what we got, a 60% discount. If you haven't picked this up just yet and you do like the space horror genre, then this one will give you, well, a few scares, I'm sure. And then we move away from those intensive, quick-paced games to something far more cerebral in the form of Stellaris. This is a grand strategy game, arguably one of the best strategy games ever released. Stellaris will allow you to expand, exterminate and explore the entirety of a galaxy. Tons of star systems here, tons of different factions, and many hours of gameplay. This one is priced at £10 currently, and if you're really into Stellaris, or you think you're really going to want to play the whole ton of expansions that Paradox always inevitably release for their different games, then you could do a lot of worse than buying the Stellaris Ultimate Bundle. This one, of course, is very, very expensive at £90, but this gets you pretty much everything you could ever want for Stellaris, and yet the original price for this is £222, so that's a pretty steep discount. A whole load of expansions here then, including all the biggest ones. Definitely worth a look. If not the overall Ultimate Bundle here, then definitely the base version of Stellaris. You'll get a lot of hours out of this, and yes, it's one of my favourite space games, certainly when it comes to strategic thinking. A game that requires far less strategic thinking is Starfield. Now this one is the biggest space game release of the year. In fact, it's the biggest space game release of many years. Reviews on this, as you can see, are still mixed. In fact, it seems the recent reviews are dropping ever lower. It's now down to 47%. The overall reviews are also dropping down to 66% now. Unfortunately, Starfield has a bit of a bad reputation from many quarters. Some might say that is quite deserved. In fact, I've got some disappointments about many areas of the game, but also it is a vast, expansive game. In my opinion, it takes some of the better elements from traditional Bethesda titles, although it also misses the mark from other traditional Bethesda titles. So, whilst Bethesda initially said this is going to be Skyrim in space, in my opinion it is far from that. But nonetheless, it is a good adventure game, and currently it has 30% off, so priced at £40. I do believe this is the biggest discount that it's been on offer since the game was released back in September. If Starfield's not your cup of tea though, but you still want a Spacebourne RPG, then you could do a lot worse than trying out The Outer Worlds. This one shares a lot of similarities with Starfield in the sense that this is a single player driven RPG. Now, you can't unfortunately fly your spaceships in this game, but you can visit a variety of different locations that are set on different worlds. There's a really good story to this one, and you'll have a lot of hours to play with it. Additionally, I think the game will give you a few laughs. This is very much on the comedy side of things. In terms of gameplay, you can take on a variety of different roles, so whether you're into melee type combat or you prefer to go all in with guns blazing, there should be an option there for you. Right now, this is priced at just £16.49, so less than half the price of Starfield at the moment. This could be a very good alternative for you. Now, a few more titles here and then I'm going to wrap up. Spacebourne 2. This is an extremely impressive game, developed by a very small development team. In fact, last I knew, this was being created by a single developer. This one is on sale right now, priced at £11, and it allows you to do pretty much everything you would want from a space game. That includes walking around on the surface of planets, flying spaceships, flying around the surface of planets, not to mention a whole variety of different missions. Now, as I said in my first impressions video of Spacebourne 2, it is very janky, and I guess that's to be expected with it being coming from such a small team. But the thing is, the developers do seem to be very committed to the game. Right now, Spacebourne 2 is priced at £11.72. A game that needs no introduction is No Man's Sky. This one is priced at £24.99, so if for some reason you've never tried out No Man's Sky yet or just haven't got around to picking it up, then at 50% off, this one is certainly worth a try. Now, there's been many expansions for this one over the years, a couple of them, quite a few in fact, this year alone, and Hello Games have confirmed there's much more to come in 2024. This one then is perhaps the best bang for your buck. In terms of value, you can't really do much better than No Man's Sky. Beyond that, I'm not going to go into too much details about this one, because at this point pretty much everyone knows everything there is to know. Currently this is priced at £24.99. And the last game I want to touch on is the Invincible. This one is not necessarily a space game in the sense that you can't fly spaceships, but it is set in space and it does have a very strong sci-fi story. This is heavily narrative driven, and you'll find yourself lost on a planet as you try to uncover a whole variety of mysteries and, well, hopefully try and rescue yourself. The game currently has just 20% off. This is priced at £20. The game didn't come out too long ago, in November in fact, so this is a pretty reasonable discount considering that this is a relatively new game. And this one I've live streamed a few weeks ago and I do highly recommend it. That then brings us to an end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I wish you all a happy holidays no matter where you are and what you do.